Ezra, there's something I need to tell you, I said, my voice lower than usual, almost lost beneath the low hum of conversation around us. We were in the back corner of Marlowe's cafe, the kind of place with chipped wood tables and mismatched chairs that made it feel charming instead of worn down. Outside, the late October rain was tapping against the glass, pooling in the street gutters. Ezra sat across from me, one arm slung casually over the back of the booth, his phone face down on the table for once. "All right," he said, watching me with that easy smile he used when he thought I was being overly dramatic. "What's going on?" I gripped my coffee mug so hard the ceramic edge pressed into my palms. "My real name isn't Claire." His eyebrows flicked up. "Okay, so what is it?" "Ariana. Ariana King." I held his gaze, waiting for the flicker of recognition. It came quickly, a sharp narrowing of his eyes before he tried to mask it. "Vincent King? The real estate guy?" His tone carried a thin thread of disbelief. "Yes," I admitted. "But that's not who I am. I left that world when I was 18. I've been living under a different name ever since." He leaned back, drumming his fingers lightly against the table. "Why not tell me before?" "Because I didn't want you to see me as his daughter. Or his scandal." My throat tightened as I spoke. For a moment, Ezra didn't say anything. His eyes slid toward the rain-smeared window. Then he reached for his phone, not to Google my father I assumed but to send a text. And in that small, almost unnoticeable action, something inside me went cold. Ezra's thumb moved quickly over his phone screen, the blue glow reflecting in his eyes. He didn't bother to angle it away from me. Not that I could see much from where I sat, just the blurred outline of a name at the top of the screen. "Work stuff?" I asked, keeping my tone light. "Yeah, just, something came up," he said, sliding the phone back onto the table, screen down again. But he didn't meet my eyes this time. I tried to shake it off. Maybe it was work. Ezra managed marketing for an outdoor apparel brand. Quick after-hours messages weren't unusual. Still, something about the way his jaw flexed, that tiny twitch he got when he was choosing his words, made the air between us feel heavier. We finished our coffees and he offered to walk me back to my apartment. The rain had slowed to a mist, the kind that clung to your hair and eyelashes. Ezra kept glancing at his phone every few steps as if waiting for something. By the time we reached my building, the easy rhythm between us felt thinner, stretched. "Can I see you tomorrow?" he asked. "Sure," I said, though the word felt automatic. When the elevator doors closed behind me, I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It wasn't a message from Ezra. It was from an unknown number. "So, you finally told him?" I froze, staring at the words. My thumb hovered over the screen, but I didn't reply. Instead, I read the message again. And again. Whoever it was, they knew my secret. And if they knew, who else did? I didn't sleep much that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that text glowing on the inside of my eyelids. By morning, my phone was still silent. No new messages, no explanation. Ezra called around 9. His voice was cheerful, almost too cheerful. "Hey, thought I'd grab lunch with you later. My treat." It sounded like a peace offering. Or maybe a test. Either way, I agreed. We met at a small Thai place near my office. He was already there, sitting in the farthest booth, scrolling on his phone. When he noticed me, he pocketed it quickly. "How's your morning been?" I asked. "Busy," he said, and launched into a story about an upcoming campaign his team was pitching. He spoke quickly, filling every pause with more words than necessary. It was like watching someone building a wall while pretending they weren't. Halfway through lunch, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his expression flickered, just for a second, before he smiled and turned it face down. "Who was that?" I asked, stabbing at my pad thai with my fork. "Just a supplier," he replied too fast. By the time we said goodbye, the knot in my stomach had tightened. That evening when I got home, I found an envelope slid under my apartment door. No address, no name, just my first name, Ariana, written in neat block letters. Inside was a single photograph. Me and Ezra, taken from a distance, walking out of Marlowe's cafe the night before. On the back, in the same handwriting, "He's not who you think he is either." I locked my door before I even took off my coat. The photo lay on my kitchen counter, the words on the back burning into me like they'd been carved instead of written. Whoever left it had been close enough to follow us. Close enough to know my real name. I grabbed my laptop and sat at the dining table, the only light in the apartment coming from the lamp above me. Ezra didn't have much of an online footprint, at least not the kind you could get from a casual search. His social media was curated to the point of sterility. Smiling group shots at work functions, hiking trails, craft beer festivals. Nothing personal, nothing messy. I dug deeper. Old tagged photos, cached pages, a couple of mentions in niche marketing blogs. Then I found something that didn't fit. A 5-year-old press release for a marketing startup in Boston. The founder's name was Ezra Martin, but the photo attached stopped me cold. It was him. Slightly younger, hair shorter, but definitely him. Only, his last name wasn't Martin in the article. It was Ezra Hale. Why change his name? I cross-referenced the old company with public records. The business had folded 3 years ago after a lawsuit from a client. Something about breach of contract and fraud. Ezra Hale had filed for bankruptcy shortly after. I sat back, staring at the screen, the sound of rain tapping the windows again. If Ezra had been hiding who he was, then that stranger's message wasn't just a threat. It was a warning. The next time I saw Ezra was 2 days later. He showed up at my apartment with takeout and that easy grin he wore like armor. I figured we could have a quiet night in, he said, holding up a bag from my favorite sushi place. We ate on the couch, a movie playing low in the background. For a while it almost felt normal. But I couldn't stop noticing the little things. The way his eyes flicked to his phone every time it buzzed, how he tilted the screen away from me without thinking. Halfway through the second roll, he excused himself to take a call in the kitchen. I muted the TV. His voice was low, urgent. No, she doesn't know. I'm handling it. Pause. Just wait until I say it's clear. When he came back, he was all smiles again, as if nothing had happened. Later, while he was in the bathroom, his phone lit up on the coffee table. The screen showed a message preview from someone saved only as M. He told you. So what's next? My pulse hammered. The conversation I'd had with Ezra at Marlowe's, the one where I'd revealed my real name, wasn't just between us. Someone had been waiting for it. The next morning, I told Ezra I had an early meeting and left before he woke up. I didn't go to work. Instead, I parked a block away from his office and waited. At 9:17, I saw him step outside, scanning the street like he was expecting someone. A woman in a dark green coat approached, her hood pulled up against the wind. They didn't hug, but there was a familiarity in the way he leaned toward her, like their conversation had started long before they met on the sidewalk. I snapped a photo from my car, my hands trembling. They walked together toward a coffee shop. I followed on foot, staying far enough back to blend into the morning crowd. Through the window, I saw them at a corner table, heads bent close, talking quickly. Her hand brushed his once and he didn't pull away. I stayed outside until they left 40 minutes later. She touched his arm before they split, him heading back toward his office, her disappearing into a parking garage. That night, when Ezra texted me asking about dinner, I typed out "Who's M?" 3 times before deleting it. If I confronted him now, I'd get nothing but smooth explanations. What I needed was proof. The following afternoon, I found myself in a narrow office above a locksmith shop, sitting across from a woman named Dana Porter. She was in her late 40s, with sharp eyes that made me feel like she could see every thought I'd ever had. I specialize in personal background work, she said, sliding a legal pad across the desk. You tell me what you want to know, I tell you if I can find it. I told her everything. The text from the unknown number, the photo under my door, Ezra's phone calls, the woman in the green coat. When I finished, Dana tapped her pen against the notepad. You don't need to convince me he's hiding something. The question is how much and how dangerous it is for you. We agreed on a retainer and she promised to start immediately. 3 days later she called. We need to talk in person. We met at a diner just off the highway. Dana slid into the booth with a manila envelope and laid it flat on the table between us. Ezra Martin isn't his real name, she began. And it's not Ezra Hale either. That was an alias he used when his Boston company went under. She opened the envelope, revealing a stack of documents. Bank statements. Old business filings. Court records. His legal name is Miles Everett, Dana said. And that woman you saw? Her name's Mara Everett. His sister. I blinked, confused. Why hide that? Dana's expression darkened. Because 3 years ago they were both investigated for running an investment scam out of that Boston startup. The charges were dropped, but a lot of people lost money. And from the looks of it, she tapped a bank transfer dated just 2 weeks ago. They might be doing it again. I stared at the transfer slip, the numbers blurring. $15,000. Out of an account I didn't recognize, routed into something called Everett Solutions LLC. That's him? I asked. Dana nodded. Registered in Delaware under Mara's name, but the mailing address is his apartment. This isn't a dormant shell, it's active. Money's moving in and out almost every week. Where's it coming from? Small amounts from multiple sources. Could be clients, could be victims. Hard to tell yet without subpoenas. The air in the diner felt heavier, the smell of frying bacon suddenly sharp in my throat. This wasn't just a man lying about his name or hiding a sister. This was a man still playing the same dangerous game he'd supposedly left behind. Dana leaned closer. If you stay close, we can catch him in the middle of a transaction. But you need to act like nothing's wrong. Pretending with Ezra was easier than I expected. I laughed at his stories, kissed him goodbye in the mornings, let him think everything was fine. Meanwhile, Dana was tracking deposits, building a timeline, connecting names. 2 weeks later, she called with the kind of detail that changes everything. We've got an upcoming meeting, she said. Tuesday, 7 p.m., the Whitcomb Hotel downtown. Mar will be there. And so will a man who wired $25,000 to Everett Solutions last month. My pulse spiked. If I could see what happened in that room, hear it, I'd have exactly what I needed. And this time I wouldn't be the one caught off guard. The Whitcomb was all glass and steel, its lobby glowing gold under massive chandeliers. I checked in under a fake name Dana had arranged, just another guest with an overnight bag. From my 10th floor room, I had a perfect view of the conference suite across the atrium. Dana had already slipped a listening device under the sideboard that morning, disguised as a phone charger. At 6:58, Ezra walked in. Dark suit, no tie, the casual confidence of someone who thought he was untouchable. Mara followed, her green coat replaced by a tailored black dress. The third man arrived minutes later. Mid-50s, tan, wearing the kind of watch that costs more than a car. I listened through the earpiece Dana had given me. Ezra's voice was smooth. We keep your investment quiet, you see a 40% return in 6 months. Completely offshore, completely clean. The man chuckled. As long as the numbers match what Mara showed me, I'm in. They talked figures, shell companies, payment schedules. All of it in careful coded language but clear enough if he knew what to hear. By the time they shook hands, my phone had already sent the recording to Dana, and to a private attorney I'd contacted 2 days earlier. Ezra thought he was walking into his next payday. He didn't know it was the opening move in mine. I spent the next week rehearsing my smile. The one that looked genuine enough to hide the fact that every time Ezra touched me I thought about the Whitcomb recording. He was buzzing with energy, talking about a big opportunity coming together. I didn't ask questions, I just let him believe I was impressed. When he invited me to a dinner at the Belmont Club, an old money members-only place in the city, I knew this was it. A room full of people who thought they were too important to ever be caught. The kind of crowd Ezra would want to impress. That afternoon I met Dana in a parking garage. She handed me a slim black flash drive. Everything you need is on here. The hotel audio, the bank transfers, the shell company documents, she said. You sure you're ready for this? I was. The Belmont's private dining room had velvet curtains and crystal chandeliers, the kind of place where every laugh sounded like money. Ezra introduced me to half a dozen men in suits and women in gowns, all of them shaking my hand like I was part of the inner circle. I played my part, sipping wine, smiling at the right moments, until dessert. That's when Ezra stood to give a short speech about the bright future ahead. While the lights dimmed for his slideshow, I slipped the flash drive into the laptop connected to the projector. The first slide wasn't his company's logo. It was the words, "Who is Ezra Martin?" The room went very still. Ezra froze mid-sentence, the confident rhythm of his voice cut clean in half. The next slide appeared, a scanned court record from Boston with the name Miles Everett highlighted in yellow. I stepped forward, my heels clicking against the marble floor. Ezra Martin is an alias, I said, my voice carrying easily in the quiet room. 3 years ago, he and his sister were investigated for running a fraudulent investment scheme. They didn't stop. They just changed their names. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Slide 3, bank transfers from the past 6 months, with Everett Solutions LLC at the top of every one. Slide 4. The Whitcomb Hotel recording, transcribed line by incriminating line. Ezra's face had gone pale, his jaw tight. Ariana, that's enough. No, I said, my tone sharp enough to cut through the air. It's not enough until every person in this room knows who they're dealing with. Slide 5. A close-up of Mara's face at the Whitcomb, handshaking with the man who'd wired $25,000 into their shell company. Gasps, whispers, the sound of chairs scraping as people pushed back from the table. Ezra reached for the laptop, but two men intercepted him. Not security, but the kind of old money members who understood what it meant to protect themselves from scandal. And for the first time since I'd met him, Ezra didn't look like a man in control. He looked cornered. The Belmont dinner dissolved in under 5 minutes. Guests slipped out in pairs, murmuring to each other, casting quick, sidelong glances at Ezra and Mara. By the time the last plate was cleared, the room felt like a stage after the curtain had dropped, empty, cold, and echoing with the memory of a scene no one wanted to talk about. Ezra didn't follow me when I walked out. He didn't call that night or the next. 3 days later, Dana texted me a link to a news article. Providence siblings under federal investigation for securities fraud. The photo was from the Belmont. Ezra's head turned just enough to show the moment his world had cracked open. Mara had left the state. Ezra's accounts were frozen, his name plastered across every local business column. The big opportunity he'd been chasing evaporated overnight. The attorney I'd hired filed a civil claim for damages. Not just for me but for the people whose money he'd moved through Everett Solutions. The case would take months, maybe years, but I wasn't in a hurry. Because in the weeks that followed I realized something. Revenge wasn't the public shaming or the legal paperwork. It was knowing I'd walked away while he stood in the ruins of the life he'd built on lies, watching everyone finally see him for exactly who he was. And that I hadn't needed to hide my name to win.